Is Ruka really trans or just gay? If you watch the anime, the answer seems pretty straightforward.
実は僕女の子になりたいんですは
But there is a little more to this story. I talked about this briefly in my FAQ video, but as this is apparently the biggest debate in Steins Gate, I want to get really in depth and clear up all the misconceptions here. First, here's what the visual novel translator says. Basically, Ruka is just gay and only wants to have a sex change because he's in love with Okabe, who doesn't care if he's a boy or a girl, and he's just like this because he had a whack upbringing and refers to himself as Boku like a boy would. Now, I don't want to criticize him too much because he obviously did a really good job with the translation, but if you give this 5 seconds of critical thought, you'll realize that this doesn't make any fucking sense because literally none of what he said points to Ruka being trans or not. First, calling himself a boy and using Boku doesn't mean shit. This should be obvious, but he naturally only uses pronouns when speaking to other people. He says Boku because that's how he thinks he should portray himself, having a dick and all, not because that's how he sees himself. A pronoun is a choice, not a mirror. And I really shouldn't have to say this, but he doesn't bring up wanting to be a girl anywhere else in this story because normal people don't just run around saying they want a sex change, like what the fuck? He brings it up when it's relevant, Jesus. Next, about his father making him dress up in girls' clothing. This doesn't make him trans or not either because while it may or may not have been his choice at the start, the fact is that he says he feels more comfortable in women's clothing right now. So the question is this just trauma or his real feelings? The answer isn't clear because he's not obviously just gay. I mean, literally just look at him. He's extremely effeminate. He doesn't just say he wants to be a girl, he basically is in every single way. Sure, he had a whack upbringing, but that didn't give him this voice or this face. It's not at all strange that someone would want their genitals to match their appearance, dude. This line...
でもすみません
なぜ謝る？
だって僕はこんな顔なのに男だから
is from when he first met Okabe. He was not in love with him at this point. But, and this is a pretty big but, let's not completely throw the translator's interpretation under the bus here because nothing I just said makes him trans or not either. And that's actually what I want you to take away from this, that we don't know. And there's arguments for both Ruka being trans or just gay. The only thing we know 100% is that he's in love with Okabe, and this is at least part of why he wants to be a girl. So we definitely shouldn't ignore this. But looking at everything else he says and does and is,
こんな顔なのに男だから
I'm not completely convinced that's the only reason. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to consider him either gay or trans, but in my opinion, the point is that he's supposed to be confused about his gender, and I find it weird that everyone on both sides of this is so allergic to the idea that someone might not have a clear idea of what gender they are. I guess people, especially trans people, want to see more trans characters in fiction, and maybe I'm not totally qualified to speak on this, but I think someone who's confused is at least as, if not more valid for this. For all those people though, there's a bit in the visual novel where Okabe says that Ruka could be a trans icon with how he looks, so that's fun. Keep in mind this is just Okabe's personal thoughts though. For everyone else, I don't know. I think this is mostly just them taking the translator's misinterpretation at face value, so I'm definitely not gonna go around accusing anyone of transphobia or anything like that. But really, do at least think about what the translator is actually saying before blindly agreeing with him, because it's really stupid. So, now that that's out of the way, I want to use this opportunity to talk to you about fan service. Yes, you, anime, I know you're watching. But first, speaking of fan service, welcome back to my series analyzing every single episode of Steins Gate. If this is something you're into, do me a favor and step on the like button. Steins Gate is the gold standard for fan service because it never gets in the way of the story. It's always very, very deliberate, and the only time it really drops its pants and digs out the fan service is for this extremely funny, heavily ironic scene with Ruka.
ほら服を脱ぎ脱ぎしてそんなところ触らないでわかった僕
すごくユリです。
違うな。ルカ子は男だ。
ということはさらにけしからん。
In fact, the only time the plot sexualizes the characters, the anime goes out of the way to hide it so it doesn't get in the way of the story. In Ferris's introduction, her boobs naturally jiggle here, it'd be weird if they didn't, but not only is she dressed super conservatively, like you'll notice, literally every other character is, her dress is dark and the camera actually angles away from them so you might not even notice. Later, we see Kurisu with her pants off in her hotel, and it would have been so easy to sexualize her here. In fact, the movie does exactly this, and I'm pretty sure this scene is the entire reason the movie exists. But the anime doesn't. It only shows us enough to show her being alone and vulnerable in her private life. And then there's when Okabe walks into Mayuri and Kurisu taking a shower. This is how a normal anime would have handled this.
Mia!
And this is how Steins Gate handles this. Okabe's gaze here is way less sexualized. Again, this scene would be so very easy to sexualize. But it shouldn't be, because it's one of the tensest, most serious scenes in the story. Sexuality never once crosses Okabe's mind here, so to sexualize it would take us right out of his head. When he's sitting there embarrassed, his only emotion is relief, and seeing them naked would just distract from that.
おかり、マユシーはとっても悲しいし恥ずかしいのです。
たく、ちょっと岡部。
おかり？
To show you what I mean, here's the scene in the visual novel.
おい、大丈夫か？
びっくりした。ヒヤヒヤさせないでくれ。
いいから出てけ！うお！
Significantly less effective. I know I keep bringing up the visual novel, but the anime really is just that much better because it respects each and every scene in the story and understands how they're supposed to be played. Whereas the visual novel is a little too keen to lean into that side of visual novel culture. Although, if this sounds appealing to you, you should watch my video on the eroge that inspired Steins Gate, saved visual novels, and basically changed anime forever. I'll put a link at the end of the video. Going back to the Ruka bit, I just want to add that I love the little history lesson on pagers, even though they were literally only like 10 years obsolete by the time this was written. Like, people must have known what pagers are. What the fuck? That's kind of spooky. I wonder if there'll ever be a time when the idea of cell phones is gonna be obsolete. Jesus, what a scary thought. Lastly, and this isn't necessarily relevant to the anime, but it's something I forgot to mention in my stage play review, link in the description, so I might as well talk about it here. Gravure modeling is like a really common thing for actresses in Japan to gain exposure. All of the actors in this play have published swimsuit or underwear photo books. All except one. That's right. The only actor who has never appeared anywhere in her underwear is the actor for Rukako. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. Is it Ms. Uedarie-san, if that's even your real name? Hot! What a brilliant casting decision. Link to the full play in the description, by the way. Is it offensive that I'm using Rukako as a chance to talk about sexy Japanese girls in their underwear here? So the big philosophical question that Ruka's character brings up in this episode is this.
私の人生はたかだか18年だけど、改変なんかしたくない。失敗したことも含めて自分の人生なんだから。
This is one of the main messages that Steins Gate wants you to take away. What right do we have to change the past? What kind of person would that make us? Because time, our past, each of our lives up until now, is exactly how it should be. You are you because of the choices you've made and the life you've lived. You are the sum of your experiences. All of your successes, all of your failures, everything good, everything bad. Every time you embarrassed yourself at high school prom when you tripped and your pants ripped and everyone saw your ass and you had to call your mom to come pick you up. All of it is part of you. Every character gains a gift from the time machine, but gives it back again when they realize that it isn't how things should be. It'd make them happier, yes, but it wouldn't be right because it isn't what made them the person they are today. That's why Ruka still uses Boku when he turns into a girl. Oh shit, it gets deeper! Because what made him who he is his experiences, all of which are from his past life, not his current one, and no matter how much he wants to stay a girl, no matter how much happier it would make him, he knows that this life isn't really his, and because of that, it would make him miserable.
混乱していたのは俺の方だった。そんなことはどうでもいい。俺はようやく気づいた。俺は俺であり、ルカ子はルカ子。
Because to take back anything is to take back a part of yourself. So don't you dare let any part of you go, because while pants can be replaced, experience can never be. Next time, the real history of Akihabara. Was Moe really introduced to Akiba by a 17-year-old girl in cat ears? The answer might surprise you, or like not. Stay tuned, and as always, thank you so much for your time, friends.